Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Mayor Fatemi. Getting back into it here, I'm going to give my final NBA first round predictions pre-playoffs. Of course, they begin tomorrow afternoon, so I'm going to give a little bit of predictions across the board. We're going to start in the East and then go into the West. Start in the East, I'm going to take a look at the Knicks and Pistons first. One of the more anticipated matchups in the Eastern Conference. Honestly, I'm tired of saying, one of the more anticipated Eastern Conference matchups. I was going to say, I'm tired of saying that because every matchup in this year's NBA playoffs is anticipated. But, Knicks, Pistons, of course. We remember the grit and grind of the New York Knicks from the last few years. This season being more of a talented team with Karl-Anthony Towns, Josh Hart in general. I personally think the Detroit Pistons youth could be their Achilles heel in this series. How they're going to be able to handle the pressure in Madison Square Garden. And then it's going to be about Jalen Brunson taking over for the New York Knicks. Flipping the script a little bit, though, I think at the same time, led by Cade Cunningham, I think this Detroit Pistons team is being underrated significantly across the league. They're 3-1 against the Knicks in the regular season. That's with Jalen Brunson in the lineup as well in all of those games. The Detroit Pistons with Jalen Duren, Tim Hardaway Jr., Asher Thompson, and Cade Cunningham in general, led by J.B. Bickerstaff. I think this team is one of the best teams, one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference, one of my personal dark horses to possibly win the Eastern Conference, even though I wouldn't pick them over, say, Cleveland or Boston. I do think this team is one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. And I know that is a little bit of a shock, but I'm picking the Pistons to win this series in 6 games. Go on to the next round to face most likely Boston in the first round. We'll get into that series next, but that's my prediction as we move forward in this NBA playoffs. Anthony, I'm so sorry I missed your question. I just wanted to talk about the Knicks first. I have a question. Do you guys plan to do a podcast for every team in the NBA and NFL? No, I have my basketball podcast. This is the basketball podcast. We just talk about everything NBA and college basketball related. I don't know as much college basketball, but I'm getting to know more. I'm learning more. So I should have more basketball content in that world coming soon, especially when the NBA playoffs close. Also, I believe the reason why they're so underrated because they're still a young team and people think they probably got to the playoffs a little bit too soon. You can say that, but at the same time, this is the same Detroit Pistons team that went from 14 wins last season. There are clips out there of NBA analysts going on air and saying this is the worst NBA team in NBA history. To go from that to what they are now, from 14 wins to 44 wins, I completely understand that you can look at them and say they're a little bit too ahead of their time, but I think this is more. I personally, as a fan, I've personally been looking at the Detroit Pistons for the last few years, ever since they drafted Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, Asher Thompson, all of these guys. Isaiah Stewart, remember his days against his feud with LeBron James back in the day. I think they're just incredibly underrated, and they're one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. So I think they're one of the best teams in general in the Eastern Conference. I may not have a whole lot of time to go across the Western Conference as well, so I may have to only preview the East, but that is what it is, just because I'm cutting it close on time here. To move on in the East, I should have started with the 1-8 matchup. If the Miami Heat win tonight, this is speculation that the Miami Heat end up winning this game tonight, but I think it's going to be Cleveland Cavaliers versus Miami Heat in the first round. Should be an easy sweep for Cleveland, I think. Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. I think Bam Adebayo probably will dominate on the paint. I don't know if he'll be able to deal with Mobley and Jared Allen for Cleveland. But I think Bam Adebayo will have games where he goes off for at least a double double for points and rebounds in general. So he will have games like that. But I think this game's going to come down. This series is going to come down to scoring with Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. I just don't think I just don't think the Miami Heat will be able to keep up with the scorers on the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that'll be their Achilles heel. That'll probably be that for the Miami Heat. Not one of the more anticipated teams in this year's playoffs. We know we saw them against the Chicago Bulls a couple nights ago, put on an absolute show. But I think the task of dealing with the Cleveland Cavaliers this season, especially without Jimmy Butler, is just going to be too much for them to handle in general. So I just think, I just think Cleveland will most likely win this game in 4, if not 5 games. But I would pick them to win in 4 in this one. I don't think so. I'm a Heat fan. I don't have faith that they're going to continue this winning streak. I think they lose tonight. You think they lose tonight against Atlanta? I can see what you mean. I talked about this at the beginning of the show. I just don't think Atlanta has the team to that they might have the team. They may have Trae Young on this team, but they don't have the maturity. We saw Trae Young lash out at referees and get ejected down 20 points against the Orlando Magic. If that is what we're seeing from Trae Young as a star player for this team, a player that we've seen perform down time and time again in the playoffs, one of the more underrated playoff performers in the Eastern Conference, in the league in general. I just don't know what. I personally think the best way to describe the Atlanta Hawks right now is really just broken, I think. I just don't think they have the team that can compete. They may be able to compete with the Miami Heat, but I think Miami, especially with how they performed against Chicago, with how they dominated Chicago from start to finish, with how Tyler Hero performed, I think with how Bam Adebayo performed, I think Bam Adebayo is the X factor in this game, and I think that's how they get past Atlanta, with Bam Adebayo dominating on both sides. You're right that they, outside of Bam and Tyler, most of the starting lineup is rookies. 100%, I completely understand what you mean. I completely know what you mean, but we're comparing apples to apples here. That's why I'm saying I don't think they'll get past Cleveland, or they won't make. I think Cleveland dominates them in the opening round of the playoffs, but I think they're good enough. They're a good enough team to get past Atlanta, I think. So, but yeah, that's just my thoughts on that. But moving on from the Miami Heat and Cleveland Cavaliers series in the first round, we're going to go to Boston and Orlando. As a Celtics fan, this is a little bit of an intriguing matchup. Not in terms of Boston. This is intriguing because of Orlando. With how they performed against Atlanta, with the only way I can really describe it is a defensive straitjacket that they put on Atlanta in that fourth quarter. A 2-point game going into the fourth quarter, being bloomed all the way into a 25-point finish. Final score 120-95, and a game that was really close beforehand. I just don't know how they can come back from this. I think Orlando, well, I mean, what am I saying? I think Orlando is one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. I think they're incredibly underrated, and they deserve a lot of credit for their performance down the stretch. I apologize for that noise. A car decides to blare their music out their window. But I think the Orlando Magic is one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. I think they'll give the Boston Celtics a little bit of a run for their money. They'll probably send this game. I think they'll send the series to at least 5, if not 6 games. But I'm still picking Boston to win this with their depth, with their star power, with their defense in general. I think Orlando can give them problems to start and can shock them a little bit at the start of the series. I think they can maybe win game 2, and they'll probably split in Boston, split in Orlando, and then Boston will probably take game 5 and game 6, I'd say. I just think the maturity and playoff experience that this Boston Celtics team has right now, it's on another level than what Orlando has, and I think that'll be the X factor in this one. This is what I'm going on, Anthony, with another chat comment in this one. This is what I'm going off of our lottery pick protection relies that we don't make the playoffs. And if we make it, we lose our pick to Oklahoma City. I have seen that, but I going back to what I said, I just think Eric Spoelstra under the Pat Riley era, I think Eric Spoelstra will have his team ready to go, and that'll be that. I just don't think. Yeah, that's just that. I think Eric Spoelstra has too much pride with Pat Riley to intentionally lose not only games but especially a playoff game. I don't see it personally. If they weren't in the playoffs, I could understand what you mean. If they were straggling on the outside, maybe similar to what the Phoenix Suns were at, a few games behind the 10 seed, I could completely see what you mean. Especially if they squeaked by the Chicago Bulls, I completely see what you mean. But I think they they kind of shocked people with their win against Chicago. So I think I just don't think they're gonna intentionally lose the game. So we'll see what happens. Also, see for me, I have Orlando upsetting Boston. I keep seeing that. I personally don't understand the noise about Orlando upsetting Boston. I think Orlando's a very young team that's growing as we in front of our very eyes. But I don't think they're on that level yet to you can say definitively that they're going to knock off Boston in the first round. I don't think they're on that level. They're good. They're great. They're incredibly young with a bright future ahead of them. But upsetting Boston is another side of the coin that I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to say they're going to upset Boston. I think the play of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown is just going to be too much for Paulo and Franz Wagner, especially with Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Derek White. I think their starting five is just too much for most teams in the NBA to handle. That's just my take on it. And especially for a young Orlando team, I just don't see them upsetting Boston in the first round. But from there, I mentioned 1 through 8, through 2 through 7, the Knicks and the Pistons 3 and 6. The final matchup that I also teased earlier in the show, the Indiana Pacers and the Milwaukee Bucks at 4 and 5. Two teams that met each other last season in the playoffs. Indiana winning that series. Milwaukee not having Giannis in that series. I think this series is going to be one of the best in the entire Eastern Conference playoffs. Outside of the Eastern Conference Finals, if we see Boston versus Cleveland in that Eastern Conference Final, I think this is going to be one of the best series in the East in general. I think I I think this series comes down to depth with Indiana, with how deep they are with their top 7 in general. I think they're going to be able to knock off. They're going to be able to compete and knock off Damian Lillard and Giannis. Damian and Giannis will do their thing. Do not get me wrong. They'll probably both average 25 points this series, going back and forth. Each one of them scoring 35 in a game, the other scoring 25. But from there, outside of Damian Giannis, this team is just it's just not a deep team. It's very top heavy, and from there, what do you have? You have Pat Connaughton, Brooke Lopez, Kevin Porter Jr., Bobby Portis. Don't get me wrong; these guys are good role players, but I think compared to the role players that Indiana has with Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, Tyrese Haliburton, Benedict Mathurin, Aaron Nesmith, I think these guys are just they're better in all around players. You have a mix of defensive guys, a mix of offensive guys, of shooters, of interior big men. You have a great mix on this Indiana Pacers team, and it makes them very unique because you don't really see teams they're a very well balanced team in general, and it's tough to. You kind of have to beat them at their own game. I've realized to beat the Indiana Pacers, you have to beat them at their own game, which is they prefer to make games a shootout. If you can beat them at their own game, they can be had. And I just don't think Milwaukee can do that. Milwaukee can exploit them and focus on the interior game with Giannis, but I just think Indiana is going to be too much for them to handle. And I think this series goes 7 games, and I have Indiana winning this series in 7 games. I apologize, I ran a little bit too long. I couldn't preview the Western Conference playoffs. I probably should have done that in the last segment. I just thought I could mix in both the East and the West, but it's okay. I'll talk about it in the next one on Monday. I'll either talk about it on Monday, or if you guys stay tuned to the GSMC Sports Network, we do shorts on this page, YouTube shorts. I'll do my YouTube shorts on the Western Conference playoffs, what I expect from all 4 matchups. That'll be uploaded there shortly after this. But thank you guys for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe and follow the show for more GSMC Sports Network content. Also, please remember to leave a positive review. It really does make more of a difference than you think. Any review, whether positive or negative, it helps us build our shows. Your feedback helps us know what you guys want to hear. Build our shows around that, and you guys are a big part in what we do here at the GSMC Sports Network. Also, we invite you to please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. It was another phenomenal show, another phenomenal week of basketball in general, of covering basketball on this show. We got a very packed weekend of NBA playoff games, a very packed weekend of holidays. Happy Easter, everybody. Happy Patriots Day to everybody. I hope you guys enjoy the long weekend, a good long break from everything going on. But yeah, enjoy the NBA playoffs. It's been a pleasure to be here with you guys again. This is Mayor Fatemi, the host of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, signing off. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekends, and happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to